Let's talk about one of the most exciting things in the world, and that is insurance, specifically flood insurance.
So the National Flood Insurance Program, that's why we're here today. It is surprising where you are required to have flood insurance.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at maps. I'm doing the research. I'm looking at maps. I'm like, ooh, does my mom live near a flood zone? Ooh, and they're all really close to flood zones.
Really?
But nobody's in one. Well, a lot of my family's down in Eugene, which is a valley.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know, it's just waiting. I'm like, you guys are locked and loaded to flood. But they don't require flood insurance because they're just right above that line. Yeah.
I still remember this deal that died. It's funny. I probably remember every deal I lost for some reason. It just sits with me.
It's the bad ones.
They were on the 8th floor of a condo complex, and they needed flood insurance, and the price on flood insurance was so expensive they couldn't do anything. They just decided not to buy in there. But I was like, why do you need flood insurance on the 8th floor? Like, it's going to be a while before it gets to you, but then apparently the whole condo complex matters.
Yeah, well, in some condos, they'll have their own separate coverage. As a lender, you have to get proof of that. It's a pain.
Right.
I hate lending on condos. I've never enjoyed the process of doing it because there's always like some little thing, and then having to explain to your borrower like, well, the thing is, you're pending litigation, and your condo board's not speaking to us. It's hard. It's rough.
Yeah. So add in flood insurance gets to be a huge problem.
Yeah. Well, and flood insurance, it's not relatively new for us. It's not. But as we know, flood insurance is relatively new. And we're going to talk about this here shortly. It's been around since, let's just take a look at it. The idea of flood insurance came up in 1968. We're like, I got to protect some homes against some flooding. Great idea. But as the lenders saw it, it really didn't come into 1973 and on. But 2012 and 2014, so the Bigger Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act and the Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act, that's where we saw the big changes. That's where we saw the forced placement. That's where we saw if you don't have enough coverage, we're going to force you to have more coverage. That's where we saw the timelines change. And then last year, October of 2021, another big change. So this is, I wasn't even lending at the time when this came out, or at least not to the point where I would have noticed these changes, because it really does impact the borrower more than it impacts the lender, unless we're talking about forced placement.
Right.
So this big change that came out, a lot of us are already familiar with how flood insurance works. But this change is basically saying we're not going to treat every flood zone equally in the cost. So your mansion on the coast of Florida, you're not going to pay the same amount as the 2-bedroom in Montana that happens to be near a floodplain.
Okay.
And that's
so
what
everything was the same?
Yeah, if they were rated in the same category, they weren't taking into consideration the value of the home. They weren't taking into consideration, the things, the insurable value is really, they weren't treating it like home insurance.
Okay.
It was just kind of a one-size-fits-all.
Interesting.
It's crazy to me that took till 2021 to come up with this plan. They're like, wait a minute.
It's almost like real risk-based pricing.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And truly, when you think about, I don't live in a mansion in Florida, but there's a higher risk of it flooding there because of the weather patterns that they have, right? The home values potentially are greater. Maybe not. I live in Portland. The home values are insanity right now. But you should have those differences, right?
Right.
Again, this isn't an impact for us, but it could be an impact for you on your loan to value and things like that when you start calculating in the cost of
Oh, sure. Your debt to income ratio can go crazy.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I had a friend just get she just got her notice in the mail, and it's just going to be insane. She lives in, she works actually at the Knowledge Coop, but she lives in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So she's on an island, and they've got the hurricanes come through there every year. And so, she's like, she gets it, but still, it was a big jump.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And, I'm sorry, I wish I could remember the timeline specifically for these things. They gave them time. Like, here's your warning. The rates are changing. And if you weren't ready for that financially, which I would kind of hope you are to some extent.
Right.
But if they're basing it on the value of your home, it could be a significant jump. And especially if you think about maybe somebody who's owned their home for a very long time. they don't care about the value of their home so much because it's never impacted. They didn't pay $500,000 when they bought the house, right? But suddenly your insurance is jumping based on that, and based on the fact that it's likely to flood more often than, again, that home in Montana that may be better protected because you don't have the severity of storms. But